Welcome to Monsters, Maybe, the podcast, the official deep dive companion to Wilson H. Bard's Monsters Maybe series. Each episode, two voices sit down to pick apart one book or one big idea from the world of Wall-E, Medusa, and the monsters who might not be monsters at all. Before we get into it, two quick things. First, the voices you're about to hear in this discussion are AI-generated, built to walk through the Monsters Maybe world in conversation form. Second, this is a full spoiler discussion. We cover complete plot details, twists, and endings from across the Monsters Maybe series. If you haven't read the books yet, consider this your spoiler warning.
So, imagine for a second that you are standing in the dark.
Right.
The stone beneath your feet is completely cold, the air smells of, damp earth and maybe old copper, and you can hear this faint rhythmic breathing of something massive just waiting in the shadows.
Just terrifying, honestly.
It really is. And, a single spilled drop of wine on a nobleman's sleeve has just condemned a 13-year-old girl to be eaten by this monster. You have exactly 12 hours to break her out of the most secure, mathematically perfect prison ever built. So, how do you even do that?
Well, you definitely don't do it with overwhelming force, that's for sure. I mean, you do it by exploiting the structural and psychological blind spots of the exact people who built the cage. You essentially weaponize their own arrogance against them.
Which is just so fascinating.
Wow.
So, welcome to today's deep dive. We are completely immersing you in this world of hidden lives, silent struggles, and honestly, one of the most unbelievable acts of ultimate rebellion on record.
Yeah, we're dissecting the historical accounts and the surviving documents of the palace staff, the people who are serving under this notoriously sadistic ruler, King Minos of Crete.
Right. And, what kind of sources are we actually looking at here?
So we are working from a collection of primary narrative accounts, architectural fragments, and even stolen manifests that really chronicle the inner workings of Minos' palace.
Wow.
Yeah, these sources detail the frantic construction of his infamous labyrinth and this meticulously planned, almost impossibly executed escape by a group of young captive servants.
So our mission today, for you listening, is to unpack the mechanics of their survival. We're going to explore how a tyrant's psychological warfare created the very tools used to dismantle his regime.
Exactly.
And how a single dropped architectural map fundamentally altered the geometry of power. We are going to forensically analyze the exact tactical mechanics of this breakout.
Because it is just this profound case study in asymmetrical leverage.
Right, like David and Goliath kind of stuff.
Yeah. Exactly. The power dynamic in Knossos was absolute, which means the vulnerabilities were completely invisible to those at the top. So to understand the mechanics of their escape, we first have to, dissect the mechanics of their oppression.
Because you can't break out of a system until you understand exactly how it's designed to hold you.
Precisely. You have to know the cage.
So we have to start with King Minos, who is referred to in the sources as the Gilded Boy King. And when you read these primary accounts of his daily life, it's not just the cruelty that stands out. It's the casual, almost bored nature of it.
Oh, absolutely. The boredom is the most chilling part.
There's this specific scene recorded by a court scribe that I just cannot stop thinking about. So Minos is lounging on his marble throne, right, in the mid-morning sunlight.
Right.
He's idly peeling grapes, and he's using this jewel-encrusted dagger to skewer olives. And simultaneously, he is casually reviewing execution lists of suspected traitors.
Yeah, that juxtaposition of mundane, luxurious leisure with the administration of death, it's a highly specific autocratic tool.
Like dinner theater for him.
Literally. He treats executions like dinner theater. The source material actually notes how he specifically curates his audience for these events in the arena.
Wait, curates them how? Like a guest list?
Exactly like a guest list. For instance, he cancels Prince Phelon's invitation to the royal viewing box simply because the prince is wearing sandals that Minos finds insulting.
Insulting sandals.
Yeah.
I read that and I just assumed it was, a teenager being petty. Like high school drama, but with lethal stakes.
It sounds like that, sure, but it's much deeper than that. He cancels a foreign prince over footwear, but he deliberately keeps Governor Lysandros on the guest list because, according to the scribe, the governor's daughter faints at the good bits.
Wow. Just wow.
Yeah, it's not pettiness. Well, it is, but it's calculated cognitive dissonance. I mean, think about it. If the rules of survival in a court are logical, like if you're punished only for treason or theft, then the subjects can adapt, right?
Right, they can follow the rules and feel safe.
Exactly. But Minos doesn't want anyone to feel safe. By punishing a high-ranking prince over sandals, he establishes that the rules are completely arbitrary.
So you never know where you stand.
Never. He's demonstrating that your life depends entirely on his momentary whim. The subjects are kept perpetually off balance.
It's an architecture of fear,
Mm.
which honestly brings a horrifying context to how he treats Daedalus.
Oh, Daedalus, the realm's premier builder.
Right, the genius behind the labyrinth itself. Minos forces Daedalus to execute 6 complete revisions of the maze's blueprint in a single week.
6 revisions. For a structure that size, it's literally impossible.
And the demands. He demands curved, dead-end stairs that violate basic physics. And he insists on having the entire southern quadrant of the maze flipped, physically moved, just because he prefers to view the beast in early light.
Yeah, and you look at those demands from a purely logistical standpoint, and they are catastrophic. I mean, Daedalus is arguably the greatest structural engineer of antiquity.
Right, he's a genius.
Minos has this incredible asset at his disposal. So why sabotage the construction with these arbitrary, impossible demands?
It doesn't make any sense from a project management perspective.
No, but the sources explicitly quote Minos explaining this to a visiting dignitary. He says, you can't buy fear like this. You build it.
You build it. That's, wow. So he's not just building a prison for the monster. He's building a psychological prison for Daedalus.
Precisely. It is the absolute subjugation of excellence. Minos enjoys making a genius squirm.
Because if Daedalus can be broken, anyone can.
Exactly. If Daedalus, who is this indispensable asset to the crown, is kept in a state of constant, terrified exhaustion, then what hope does a common servant have? It proves that no amount of utility or brilliance can protect you from the king's authority.
So, okay, if that is the psychological meat grinder operating at the top of the hierarchy, we have to look at the reality of the people operating at the bottom.
The invisible ones?
Right. The contrast between Minos' gold-leafed existence and the grueling reality of the palace staff is just jarring. The accounts describe the kitchens as this continuous chaotic war zone.
I can't even imagine the heat in there.
Right. It's clanging iron pans, flying onion peels, shouting cooks operating in just suffocating heat. And the demands raining down from the court are completely absurd.
The logistics of feeding that court are a total nightmare. The sources detail requisitions for unicorn-shaped biscuits for the Feast of Horns.
Unicorn biscuits.
Yeah, and gold leaf flatbread that has to be served at the exact moment the sun hits the center of the courtyard.
It makes me think of, how we view stagehands in a theater.
Oh, that's a great point.
Like, if you go to a play, there are stagehands dressed entirely in black, physically moving the props right in front of you. And the audience's eyes process the light bouncing off those people, but psychologically we are conditioned to just edit them out of reality.
We just pretend they aren't there.
Exactly, so the illusion of the play remains intact. And Minos and his nobles do the exact same thing with the servants. They are the stagehands of the palace. They are seen, but they are not perceived.
That is a phenomenal analogy, actually, because it highlights the major vulnerability of the ruling class. When you psychologically edit a human being out of your reality, you stop filtering your words around them.
You talk like they aren't in the room.
Right. You stop hiding your documents from them. Invisibility strips the servants of their humanity in the eyes of their oppressors, sure, but it grants them an unparalleled tactical advantage.
But the psychological toll of that invisibility, it really manifests differently depending on who you are in that system. And we really need to examine how different individuals in this palace internalize their servitude.
Yeah, we have some very distinct case studies in the sources.
Starting with Jorgen, the King's Guard.
Yeah.
This guy is such a tragic, fascinating figure. He is built like a battering ram, just covered in physical scars from the Eastern Campaign.
A total veteran.
Right, and he is the sole survivor of a doomed military unit. He managed to drag himself back to the palace, carrying vital intelligence that actually turned the tide of the war.
And, what is his reward for this unimaginable trauma? For surviving a slaughter that claimed literally all of his brothers in arms?
Yeah, what's the boy king give him?
Minos pins a medal on him, gives him the title Pride of Realm, hands him a gilded tunic, and stations him as a personal guard inside the throne room.
Which is a promotion that functions entirely as a prison sentence.
Exactly.
The sources make it very clear that Jorgen despises his reality. He hates his job. He hates the gold ceilings. He holds just utter contempt for the boy king playing with his food while men are dying on the borders.
He hates everything about it.
Yet he stays. He stands there, completely silent, a lethal weapon, just watching it all happen. Why doesn't he just snap the king's neck. I mean, he easily could.
He definitely could. But it comes down to the clinical weaponization of trauma. We are looking at a textbook example of the invisible leash.
Yeah, invisible leash.
Yeah. Toxic authoritarian systems are incredibly adept at identifying the virtues of their subordinates, things like loyalty, honor, duty, and they weaponize those virtues against them. Jorgen's loyalty isn't to Minus at all. It's born of profound survivor's guilt.
So because his unit died, he feels like he owes a debt to the state, like he has to suffer.
Exactly. He believes his life was spared for a reason, and that reason was to serve the kingdom. And even though the kingdom is currently embodied by a sadistic, narcissistic teenager, Jorgen's rigid military conditioning just won't allow him to break his oath.
Wow.
He accepts his proximity to the tyrant as this cruel penance. He is trapped in a gilded cage, not by iron bars, but by his own moral injury. If he abandons his post, in his mind, his men died for nothing.
That is utterly heartbreaking. He has the physical power to dismantle the regime, but he is psychologically chained to the floor.
Hanged by his own honor, yeah.
Now, contrast Jorgen's grim, paralyzed loyalty with Eppo. Eppo is this young, internal messenger. He was born a slave to the courtyards.
Right.
He has survived 14 summer festivals in this environment, which is practically a lifetime for a captive born there.
Oh, absolutely. And Eppo is the perfect counterpoint to Jorgen. Where Jorgen sees an inescapable, solemn duty bound by honor, Eppo sees a mechanical system to be gamed.
He's a pragmatist.
Totally. Eppo has no glorious past. He has no military honor to uphold. He possesses the razor-sharp street smarts of a survivor who was born into captivity.
Eppo doesn't just endure his servitude, he actively weaponizes it. Because he's ignored as just like a dirty kid carrying a leather satchel. He can go anywhere in the palace.
Invisible stagehand.
Right. He uses the messenger routes to map the blind spots of the guards. He loiters in the shadows and eavesdrops on the royal architects, complaining about construction schedules. He casually swipes shipping manifests right off a quartermaster's desk.
He's a one-man intelligence agency.
Seriously. And he even regularly visits his brother, who is an alchemist's apprentice, and skims highly volatile chemicals from the royal stores, just right under their noses.
Because Eppo understands the sociology of power way better than the king does. He realizes that the powerful do not look down.
They don't look at the dirt.
Right. They look at each other to monitor their rivals, and they look up to monitor the king. They never, ever look at the boy carrying the messages. This gives Eppo an intelligence-gathering capability that, honestly, a foreign spy network would spend millions to achieve.
And Eppo's surveillance is exactly what sets the stage for the inciting incident of this entire historical narrative.
Yeah.
But, before we get to the spark that ignites the escape, I think we have to establish the stakes here.
The stakes are incredibly high.
Yeah. What exactly is the risk these kids are taking? What happens to a servant who tries to run and fails?
The stakes are absolute. I mean, the rumor mill among the servants is chillingly specific about this. If you are caught as a fugitive, the standard punishment is the labyrinth. You are sent into the dark to be fed to the beast.
Which is just terrifying. And Eppo and his best friend Bryn, they literally use dark comedy to cope with this reality.
Yeah, they do.
In the accounts, they're constantly joking about the gruesome specifics, dismemberment, decapitation. Eppo claims he heard from a guard that the Minotaur once ripped a man's arm off and beat his brother to death with it.
Which is so grim, but that kind of morbid humor is a documented psychological defense mechanism against learned helplessness. By making a joke out of the horror, they reclaim a tiny fraction of power over their fear.
That makes a lot of sense.
But the reality is still stark, and if you aren't sent to the maze, there is an alternative punishment for treason. The sources mention that fugitives are repurposed as admirers adorning the drawbridge.
Admirers adorning the drawbridge. That is such a sanitized, chilling euphemism for public execution.
It's horrific.
Their bodies are just displayed as a permanent, rotting warning to everyone else entering the palace.
Yeah.
So you have this group of young people who know exactly what failure entails. Let's look at the personal stakes for two of the main figures driving this escape, Kalala and Bryn.
Well, Kalala's background is rooted in just acute childhood trauma. She was captured nearly a decade ago from a coastal village called Theridon after it was burned by Minos' fleet.
She was just a kid.
Yeah, she's just a young child, but she still remembers the iron taste of fear and the smell of burning thatch.
And she actually started out her captivity working as an acolyte in the Temple of Athena, which, from what I understand, was considered a pretty prestigious placement.
It was, very much so.
But she got reassigned to the grueling work of the kitchens for, and I actually love this detail, adding her own upbeat dance numbers to the sacred solemn verses.
Which I love, too. It demonstrates an irrepressible spark of defiance, you know? Even after years of institutionalization, the system hasn't fully crushed her individuality.
But now she's working the stew pots in a sweltering kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
And her ultimate stake, the thing that keeps her grounded and, frankly, terrified, is protecting her younger sister, Lena.
Rightly.
Lena is 13. She was brought into his captivity so young, she doesn't retain any memories of the outside world.
Yeah.
To Lena, the palace is the entire universe, and Camilla is her fierce protector.
And then we have Bryn. Bryn is a relatively new arrival, which brings a very different energy to the group. He was captured from a merchant ship off the Shield Coast just 2 years prior.
So he remembers freedom.
Oh, clearly. His crew was slaughtered during a boarding action by Minos' warships. He currently survives by mucking out the royal horse stalls, but he hasn't surrendered his past. He holds on to this dream of a place he heard about in sailor shanties, this mythical sanctuary called Pelegon's Retreat.
A place where there are no kings.
Exactly.
So you have this intense pressure cooker environment. You have these kids desperate for freedom, deeply traumatized but terrified of the consequences. And then
The spark.
the Daedalus secret map.
This is the critical inflection point of the whole historical account. Everything shifts from abstract longing to concrete possibility in this moment.
Right. So Lena, the 13-year-old, is on a delivery run. She's balancing this heavy silver tray of roasted lamb and fig sauce destined for Senator Gryson's chambers.
Typical day.
Right. But as she passes the corridor leading to the architect's wing, she spots something unusual tucked against the baseboard near a servant's stairwell. It's a tiny vellum scroll, tightly bound in crimson twine.
Sitting there.
Yeah, and it is sealed with thick, dark green wax, bearing Daedalus's personal crest. And attached to the twine is a heavy, cold iron key embossed with a stylized minotaur head.
And Lena, despite being so young, she recognizes the crest. She understands it is highly sensitive, and she immediately smuggles it back to the kitchens, hiding it under her apron to show her sister.
Okay, but I am really struggling with the logistics of this exact moment.
How so?
We are talking about Daedalus here. A man who measures stone to the half degree. A man renowned across the entire Mediterranean for his meticulous, obsessive nature.
Right, he's a perfectionist.
How does a genius of that caliber just accidentally drop the most highly classified, sensitive document in the entire palace in a dusty stairwell used by the kitchen staff? It just doesn't track.
Well, you're evaluating Daedalus as a genius operating in a vacuum. You have to look at him as a genius who is actively being psychologically dismantled by a tyrant.
Oh, right. Meno's impossible deadlines.
Exactly. We know from Eppo's eavesdropping earlier that Daedalus is dealing with Minos' new decree halting all construction from dusk to dawn, meaning they have to accomplish twice the work in half the time. The architects are panicked because the 11-pointed star junction in the lower levels is 19 months behind schedule.
19 months behind on a project for a king who executes people over footwear. The stress must have been absolutely lethal.
Beyond lethal. We are talking about severe, chronic sleep deprivation. And when a human being is pushed past their breaking point like that, they experience microsleeps.
Microsleeps, like falling asleep with your eyes open.
Yeah, brief, involuntary episodes of unconsciousness that can last just a fraction of a second. Executive function collapses. Fine motor skills degrade. Daedalus is a brilliant engineer, but his physiology is failing under the weight of Minos' impossible demands. Dropping a small scroll while rushing up a stairwell is a catastrophic error, obviously, but it is a profoundly human one under those conditions.
So he just legitimately fumbled it because he was basically dead on his feet.
Most likely, yes.
Wow. Okay, so Keller realizes what they have. She calls an emergency meeting in the upper pantry. Their covert signal is blowing out candles 3 and 5 in a specific window facing the courtyard.
Which is such a smart, subtle system.
Really smart. So Eppo, Bryn, Kella, and Lena gather in the dark among the flour sacks, and Eppo breaks the green wax seal. They decode Daedalus's map, and they discover something that fundamentally alters their reality.
The game changer.
Yeah. The ultimate prison, the inescapable labyrinth of Knossos, actually has fatal design flaws.
This is where structural engineering intercepts the narrative of liberation. The map contains highly specific, panicked notations in Daedalus's own hand. He notes that the labyrinth requires absolute, perfect 90-degree conformity to function.
Because it's a giant machine, basically.
Yes. Psychologically, it needs perfect angles to disorient the victim and eliminate any sense of true north. And mechanically, the stone tracks for the moving walls and the counterweights for the traps require flawless geometry to operate smoothly.
But the map reveals that the rush job is destroying the integrity of the build. Daedalus writes that node 18B is 0.5 degrees off spec. And worse, node 77E shows a deviation nearing 2 full degrees.
I really want to break down why that is so vital.
Please do, because 2 degrees sounds like nothing.
Right, a 2-degree deviation sounds like nothing. If you are building a small shed in your backyard, you won't even notice it. But in precision architecture, over the span of a long corridor, say, 100 meters of solid ashlar masonry, a 2-degree shift compounds exponentially.
Oh, so it multiplies over distance.
Exactly. By the time you reach the end of that corridor, the wall might be out of alignment by several feet.
So the stones simply won't fit together at the next junction.
Exactly.
All
It
right.
ruins the geometry of the entire quadrant. It creates uneven pressure vectors on the load-bearing joints, which leads to stress fractures. It warps the iron tracks, which prevents those heavy stone portcullises from dropping flush to the floor.
That's a huge mechanical failure.
It is. And critically, for someone trying to hide, it creates unintended optical illusions. Literal blind spots where the geometry curves out of alignment, creating pockets where a person could stand without being seen by the guards looking down through the viewing grates.
So Minos's demand for speed is physically breaking down his own ultimate weapon. He rushed it and broke it.
Yep. His impatience created the vulnerability.
But the compromised structural integrity isn't even the biggest bombshell on this parchment.
Not even close.
As Eppo is reading through the architectural shorthand, he gets to a section detailing an unfinished wing, and he finds a notation for a harbor access gate.
A harbor access gate.
Yeah. Daedalus has written this frustrated note, questioning whether the counterweights on this portcullis can accommodate standard shipping containers.
And the psychological shift in that cramped pantry must have been just electric. They realize immediately what they're looking at. A gate designed to accommodate shipping containers is not a small maintenance store for wheelbarrows.
No.
It is a massive, direct subterranean route drilled entirely through the mountain wall.
A straight shot directly to the seaport. It completely bypasses the massive outer walls of the palace. It bypasses the courtyard patrols, the armory guards, the main gates.
Bypasses everything.
It is a secret artery running from the belly of the monster straight to the open ocean.
So with a map revealing a route and a key to open the doors, hope is suddenly a tangible thing for them. But, hope without a tactical strategy is just a faster way to die.
Right, you can't just run for it.
No. The children recognize that they must design an operational plan. They have the where, but they urgently need the when and the how.
So they act like a covert ops team. I mean, they outline a methodical sequence for their breakout. The original timeline they establish is actually quite conservative and smart.
Very calculated.
They decide they must wait for the upcoming Festival of Horns to conclude. Why? Because the festival brings 28 visiting noble houses, complete with their retinues, horses, and guards, into the palace. It creates massive logistical chaos.
The perfect cover.
Exactly. And Eppo, utilizing his invisibility as a messenger again, manages to lift a shipping manifest that shows 13 merchant ships are scheduled to depart for the Strait of Phineas right after the festival ends.
Which is huge because the Strait of Phineas is highly strategic. It operates as a no-questions-asked free trade port. It is the perfect environment for 4 fugitive youths to blend into the crowds and secure passage further west toward Pelegon's retreat.
They also establish their operational window. They know from Daedalus's own complaints on the map that Minos halted all construction in the maze from dusk to dawn.
Right, the new decree.
The labyrinth, which is usually swarming with stonemasons, will be completely abandoned at night, so they start accumulating their gear.
This part is so impressive.
It really is. Bryn, working in the stables and maintenance sheds, quietly secures a heavy iron hammer and a forged pry bar. Lena, using her access as an attendant to the upper floors, steals the longest-burning window candles and scavenges discarded linen scraps from the royal tailor's waste bins.
And Eppo leverages his relationship with his brother in the alchemy labs. He smuggles out a sealed flask of highly volatile fire oil and a concentrated vial of sleeproot brine.
Sleeproot brine.
Yeah, it's a powerful alkaloid sedative that Eppo claims is potent enough to drop a dozen grown men.
It is honestly like the classical heist movie montage. The crew assembling the specialized gear. Except the operatives are deeply traumatized teenagers, and they're arming themselves with kitchen scraps, horse tack, and stolen herbs.
It just highlights their profound ingenuity. They're repurposing the detritus of their own subjugation into the very tools of their liberation. A pry bar isn't just a tool here. In this context, it's a key to survival.
But then, this careful, methodical, long-term plan is suddenly blown to pieces by a single drop of wine.
Yeah, we reach the catalyst. The inciting incident that forces their hand and escalates the timeline from weeks to literally hours.
We have to analyze this pre-games brunch. It's the morning before the festival officially begins. Minos is hosting the 28 visiting dignitaries in the grand dining hall. He is at the head of the massive table, holding court, loudly telling the self-aggrandizing story about a recent military conquest.
Of course he is.
Right. Lena is serving as a junior attendant, pouring wine. As Minos reaches the climax of his story, he sweeps his arm wide for dramatic effect, and he blindly clips the heavy crystal neck of the wine decanter Lena is holding.
And the historical accounts describe this moment as if time just slowed down. The decanter tips, accelerating toward the marble floor.
But Lena, whose reflexes have been honed from years of balancing heavy, scalding trays while dodging violent, angry cooks in a chaotic kitchen, she drops into a fluid defensive catch. She snatches the decanter midair by the base and simultaneously snaps her other hand out to catch the silver cup before it shatters.
It's a flawless display of biomechanics and situational awareness.
Incredible.
Yeah.
And the crowd of dignitaries reacts the way any normal group of people would. They applaud her reflexes. Some laugh in relief. A visiting senator actually raises his glass in admiration of the save.
A natural reaction.
But a single splash of dark red wine has flicked upward from the rim and landed on Minos's pristine white sleeve.
And here we go. This is a textbook demonstration of narcissistic injury in an autocrat. Minos does not care about the ruined sleeve.
Not at all.
He is furious because the center of gravity in the room shifted. The attention of 28 powerful noble houses pivoted from his grand heroic narrative to the physical prowess of a lowly invisible slave.
He was upstaged by a servant.
Exactly. He was upstaged. His fragile ego just cannot tolerate the room applauding a servant while he is speaking.
So Minos stands up. The laughter dies immediately. The room goes dead silent. He looks at 13-year-old Lena, and he coldly states that she interrupted his story with an oafish performance.
Oafish. Unbelievable.
He announces to the terrified room that this year's festival games will begin with something fresh to entertain the guests. He points directly at Lena and sentences her to be the appetizer for the beast in the labyrinth at noon the very next day.
It is a devastating, reflexive display of absolute power. He condemns a child to a horrific, agonizing death simply to reclaim the psychological dominance of the room and remind the visiting nobles who holds the power of life and death.
Lena is immediately seized by the guards and dragged down to the holding cells, and the news hits the kitchens like a physical shockwave. Kala makes a heartbreaking but completely necessary operational pivot. She gathers Bryn and Eppo and declares they are leaving tonight.
The timeline is gone.
The careful, methodical plan, waiting for the festival to end, is completely scrapped. It has instantly become an immediate, highly dangerous, improvised rescue mission.
The theory of the breakout must now be tested against the reality of the fortress. We really need to break down the exact tactical mechanics of how these three youths outsmarted the heavy security apparatus of King Minos.
Okay, let's trace the mechanics of this infiltration. It starts at midnight. How do they bypass the heavy guard patrols stationed on the upper and middle floors to even get down to the labyrinth entrance? Kayla uses a bent hairpin to manipulate the simple latch on the laundry chute grate in the upper servants' quarters.
This is a brilliant exploitation of the palace's internal infrastructure. I mean, a palace that hosts 28 noble houses generates a staggering volume of soiled linens.
Mountains of laundry.
Mountains. The architects designed these massive vertical chutes to move this laundry quickly to the sub-basements, completely bypassing the grand staircases.
So at midnight, Kala, Bryn, and Eppo slide feet first into the chute. They tumble blindly through the darkness, dropping past multiple floors, the friction burning their skin, until they crash into a massive pile of bundled linen in the damp sub-basement.
Just a crazy risk, but it worked.
They have successfully bypassed hundreds of guards. But now they are in the lower corridor, and there is a heavily armed guard post situated directly outside the iron gates of the maze entrance.
This is where Bryn's prior surveillance and Eppo's stolen intelligence really pay off. They knew the sub-basement patrols would be short-staffed because the captain of the guard had to pull men to cover the influx of visiting nobles above.
The chaos of the festival working for them.
Right. There is only one sentry stationed at the gate, and he's bored, sitting at a wooden table, eating cold mutton and rolling dice against himself.
So they execute a diversion. Bryn takes the stolen candles, the linen scraps from the tailor, and the flask of fire oil. How exactly does he make a bomb out of this?
Well, it's not a high-explosive bomb, right? It's an incendiary distraction, which is much smarter. Bryn creates what they call fire poppers.
Fire poppers.
Yeah. He takes small, tightly bound balls of linen and impregnates the outer layers with varying concentrations of the volatile fire oil. He uses the candle wicks as crude, delayed fuses. The different concentrations of oil mean they will ignite and pop at staggered intervals, creating the illusion of multiple attackers.
So Bryn strikes a flint, lights the fuses, and hurls the bundles deep down an opposite empty corridor. A few seconds later, PLP, C-Resec, bang! Bright flashes of light and concussive sound echo off the stone. It sounds exactly like an armed breach.
And the sentry reacts instinctually, exactly as his military training dictates. He draws his weapon and rushes toward the noise of the explosions to intercept the perceived threat, leaving the gate unguarded for a crucial window of maybe 30 seconds.
Just 30 seconds. Kalila rushes the gate. Her hands are shaking so badly she drops the iron Minotaur key.
Oh, that stress.
She scoops it up, forces it into the heavy iron lock, and throws her weight against the lever. It clicks. They slip inside, pull the massive grate shut, lock it from the inside, and step into the suffocating darkness of the labyrinth. They cross a literal red line painted on the stone floor that reads, "Absolutely do not cross."
They have officially entered the domain of the monster, and this is where the tactical survival plan intersects with a reality so bizarre, it completely upends our understanding of King Minos' psychological warfare.
Yeah, this part is wild. So they're creeping through the dim, flickering torchlight, navigating by Daedalus's stolen map. They can hear the roars, deep, echoing, guttural roars vibrating through the stone floors. They're trying to reach the holding cells to find Lena before she's transferred to the arena at dawn. But suddenly, as they round a corner that was supposed to be a dead end, thanks to that 2-degree architectural deviation we talked about, light floods their vision.
And they stumble right into the beast.
Eppo is so profoundly terrified by the massive silhouette towering over them that his fine motor control just fails. He fumbles the vial of concentrated sleep root potion. It shatters on the stone floor, the liquid rapidly absorbing to the dust. Their one weapon against the monster is destroyed.
A total disaster.
Calla screams. But the monster recoils and shrieks back at them.
Yes. This is the ultimate surreal plot twist of the Knossos Labyrinth. The terrifying, bloodthirsty beast they have feared their entire lives is not a monster at all. It is Wally.
Wally, an 8-foot-tall, incredibly muscular minotaur who is currently wrapped in a highly ornate embroidered silk dressing gown, standing in front of a full-length polished bronze mirror, doing vocal warm-ups and practicing his roars.
I mean, you can't make this up. He is, as he loudly and proudly announces to the terrified children who just interrupted his rehearsal, the former first chair of dramatic performance at the Julius Yard Conservatory for the Fine Arts.
He's a theater kid. He's a professionally trained actor.
He really is, and it completely reframes Minos' entire operation. Think about the logistics of keeping a real feral apex predator in a maze. Feral beasts are unpredictable. They sleep for 20 hours a day, they hide in the dark, they get sick.
They aren't reliable performers.
Exactly. If Minos invites 28 noble houses to watch an execution, and the beast decides to take a nap in a corner, Minos looks foolish. So Minos found Wally performing in a traveling musical troupe in a coastal city. He realized that a massive, theatrically trained Minotaur could hit his marks, project his voice, and put on a much more reliable, spectacular show for his curated audiences than a feral animal ever could.
So Wally struck a lucrative contract. He agrees to act as the monster, terrifying the nobles looking down through the brass grates, and in exchange he gets complete design authority over his living quarters in the center of the maze. He lives in absolute luxury, practicing his craft, safe from the prejudices of the outside world.
But of course, this immediately raises the question of the gruesome executions. What about the dismemberment the servants whispered about? Eppo heard a guy got his arm ripped off.
Right. What about the actual violence?
Stagecraft and practical effects.
Amazing.
Wally is highly offended that they think he eats people. He's a vegetarian who faints at the sight of actual blood.
Yeah.
He shows the kids his dressing room. It's filled with collapsible canvas mannequins, hidden seams, bladders made of pig intestines, and massive jars of dark, viscous sunberry jam.
Sunberry jam.
Yeah, he explains the fluid dynamics of it. Under the flickering torchlight, viewed from 40 feet above through a brass grate, a canvas mannequin stuffed with sunberry jam being dramatically torn apart looks indistinguishable from real carnage. It's a bloodless, flawless optical illusion.
It's a revelation regarding the logistics of tyranny. Minos doesn't actually want the horrific mess and disease of real, rotting corpses in his pristine, expensive architectural marvel.
No, it would ruin the aesthetic.
The condemned prisoners are frightened out of their minds by Wally's terrifying performance, herded out a rear-loading door, loaded onto unmarked ships in the dead of night, and quietly exiled or sold into foreign slavery. It's all smoke and mirrors designed to project absolute godlike terror without the logistical nightmare of managing an actual slaughterhouse.
So Wally, this magnificent, dramatic, highly sensitive minotaur, listens to their story. He hears that Lena, a 13-year-old girl, is scheduled to be lowered into the arena at noon to be his appetizer. And Wally decides he isn't going to hit his marks today.
Good for Wally.
Yeah, he agrees to help them execute the final phase of the escape.
The tactical execution of this final phase relies entirely on Wally's insider knowledge of the guard rotations and his extensive theatrical supplies.
Okay, so the next morning, just hours before the festival games begin, Wally takes the tiny amount of sleep root brine that Eppo managed to salvage from the broken vial by, soaking it up with a rag. Wally knows the guards stationed at the rear pier gate always drink from a specific ale keg to steady their nerves before the roaring starts.
Right, because his roars are terrifying, even if they are fake.
Exactly. So he squeezes the rag into the keg, lacing the ale with the powerful alkaloid.
We're looking at basic pharmacokinetics here. The sleep root absorbs rapidly into the bloodstream when combined with alcohol. Within an hour, the rear guards are completely incapacitated, passed out in the guardhouse. While they sleep, Bryn and Eppo disguise themselves in ceremonial guard armor pulled from Wally's extensive prop chests.
Meanwhile, Kalala is working frantically in the dressing room. She is furiously stitching together a child-sized canvas dummy, stuffing it tight with straw, dressing it in Lena's spare tunic, and filling the internal bladders with sunberry jam.
She's building the prop.
At noon, the trumpets sound. Lena is lowered in a wooden cage into the arena. The nobles above are cheering, and Wally puts on the performance of a lifetime.
He utilizes every ounce of his conservatory training. He roars, he charges the walls, he kicks up massive clouds of sand and dust to obscure the sightlines from the grates above.
And in the confusion of the dust cloud, Bra and Eppo, looking exactly like palace guards in their prop armor, sprint into the arena, grab the terrified Lena, and hustle her out through the rear exit corridors.
And simultaneously, Wally drops the child-sized dummy in the center of the arena and proceeds to theatrically tear it limb from limb. The sunberry jam explodes across the sand. The crowd of nobles above goes wild, completely and entirely fooled by the violence of the spectacle.
It is a flawless, high-stakes bait-and-switch. The children navigate the final corridors using Daedalus's map, reach the heavy iron portcullis at the rear gate, step over the unconscious, snoring guards, and find Wally waiting for them at the edge of the pier for the final handoff.
Wally is wiping sunberry jam off his snout with a silk handkerchief. He hands Calla a heavy 8-sided coin, a Pelegonian doubloon.
Oh, those are incredibly valuable.
Yeah. The 8 sides make it impossible to counterfeit, ensuring its value anywhere in the world. And he gives them a specific passphrase. The tide favors the unseen. He tells them to walk to the end of the pier and find a captain named Soren Vale on a merchant ship called the Wayward Gull.
They approach the captain, show the heavy coin, and speak the phrase. The captain, recognizing the currency of the underground network, takes them aboard immediately, asking absolutely no questions.
They hide below decks among the cargo. As the ship pulls away from the docks, catching the wind toward the Strait of Phineas, Bryn looks back at the shrinking fortress. He starts singing that old sailor's shanty he used to hum in the stables, where the mountains kiss the sea and chains are melted into keys, and the impregnable, mathematically perfect palace of King Minos just slowly fades away into the horizon.
You know, if we step back and analyze the mechanics of this entire event, their survival relied entirely on weaponizing the blind spots of the powerful. King Minos only saw servants as props in his grand narrative of control. He saw a highly trained actor as a feral beast. He saw a genius architect as a tool to be abused and exhausted. Because of his profound arrogance, he was completely blind to their humanity, their ingenuity, and their capacity for coordinated rebellion.
So poetic.
The children survived because they understood that the system was designed to ignore them. They used that exact invisibility to pull off the ultimate vanishing act.
And I cannot let this deep dive end without mentioning a quick historical footnote because it's simply too good to leave out. Years later, King Minos' spy network finally tracks down rumors of a young woman named Lena living in Pelegon's retreat.
He just couldn't let it go.
No. Minos is so consumed by the insult to his ego that he sails a massive, expensive fleet of 32 warships to the island to burn it down and drag them back. But the historical sources suggest that the gods themselves intervened. A massive tectonic shift literally moved the island's coastal shelf overnight, rendering the navigation charts useless.
I love that.
Minos' grand fleet arrived to find nothing but open water. He was left standing on the prow of his flagship, staring at empty ocean, screaming into the wind. It is the ultimate cosmic punchline to his sadism.
It is a fitting, humiliating end for an autocrat who genuinely believed he could mathematically control the world.
We've explored the dark, suffocating psychology of King Minos' court. We've seen the hidden asymmetrical leverage of invisible servants, and we've walked step by step through a masterfully improvised escape fueled by a dropped map, a theater kid minotaur, and sheer, undeniable desperation. But before we sign off, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over.
Because there is one massive lingering mystery in the structural foundation of this entire story.
Exactly. Throughout this deep dive, we assume Daedalus dropped that map with the heavy iron key in the servant's stairwell by accident. We reason that he was suffering from chronic sleep deprivation, pushed to the brink of physical collapse by Minos' impossible deadlines.
It makes perfect logical sense medically and logistically.
It does. But consider the mind of Daedalus. This is a man who calculated load-bearing vectors in his head, a man who measured angles to the half degree. And he was trapped, tormented daily by a sadistic boy-king who delighted in watching his genius degrade.
Which forces us to look at the discovery of the map not as an accident, but as a potential calculation.
Is it possible the map was dropped on purpose? Was leaving the key in the exact route to the secret exit in a stairwell heavily trafficked by the lowest, most desperate, most invisible servants in the palace? Daedalus' own silent act of rebellion.
A masterstroke, if true.
By accidentally dropping it, he achieves total plausible deniability. If they get caught, he just lost a map. But if they escape, he proves that the king's perfect prison is flawed. We may never know if it was a moment of utter exhaustion or if it was the quietest, deadliest, most brilliant chess move on the board.
It reminds us that the structural breakdown of a tyrant's regime almost always begins with a single, untraceable flaw in the foundation.
When you break a bone, the doctor holds up the x-ray, points to the fracture and says, "There it is. The break is visible." But in the architecture of captivity and escape, the most important lines are the ones drawn in the shadows. They are the 2-degree deviations that don't quite meet. The invisible stagehands moving the props, and the keys dropped quietly in the dark. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.
That's this deep dive. If this is your first time with Monsters Maybe, the books are available in paperback and hardcover on Amazon and Walmart, free to read on Kindle Unlimited, and an audiobook on Spotify and Apple Books. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, follow the show so the next deep dive lands automatically. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe and ring the bell. A quick rating or review helps more than you'd think. We'll see you next time in the world of monsters. Maybe.
Read Monsters Maybe by Wilson H. Bard, available at Walmart and on Amazon. Or read it for free with Kindle Unlimited.